How's it going, guys? This is Nick here from Inside the Stands, bringing you my Week 7 DraftKings and FanFuel picks. So last week, my Week 6 picks that I uploaded did very good. The only pick that was bad was Coby Fleener. I don't even think he scored a point last week, which was kind of surprising. But everyone else did pretty solid. Luckily, I didn't have Coby Fleener in my lineups. I took Cameron Brate in my 2 lineups, and he did pretty well. I'm looking to have another good week like that. I made some good money. Hopefully, you guys did too. So we're going to go ahead and hop on into the quarterbacks. Alright, for quarterbacks this week, my value player is going to be Tyrod Taylor. On DraftKings, he's only $5,100 this week, and on FanDuel, he's $7,000. So he's a little bit more pricey on FanDuel than he is on DraftKings. I think they kind of, on FanDuel, they kind of give you more of a inflation or deflation in price based off of who their opponent is. He's averaging 18.8 fantasy points per game at home this season so far, and they are playing at home. They're up against Tampa Bay, who has given up the second most points to opposing quarterbacks this week. And he also, has that threat of being able to get rushing yards. So maybe he can get like 30 or 40 rushing yards and add 3 or 4 points there. Or maybe a rushing touchdown, which is worth a little bit more than a passing touchdown. At his price, I think Tyrod Taylor is definitely going to be a pretty good pick for you guys this week. Now, the safe player is going to be Drew Brees. He is the most expensive quarterback in the slate, at least on DraftKings, at $7,600, and on FanDuel he's $8,300. He's playing up against Green Bay, who, as we know, lost Aaron Rodgers this past weekend to a broken collarbone. So I think they should be able to beat them. They should be able to put up points. It is the highest game total in this slate. The New England and Atlanta game is higher, but that's only available on FanDuel. It's not on the DraftKings one. So of the DraftKings main slate, those 12 games, this is the highest game total. Last week was kind of a fluke week, I think, for Drew Brees. Green Bay's probably going to give up a lot more points against him. I don't think he's going to be having 2 weeks where he doesn't do very good in a row. I think, they might be able to put up some points back against them, even though the Saints defense has been looking a little bit better lately. So if the game gets high scoring, I think Drew Brees is going to be a pretty good pick. My risky player this week is going to be Brett Hundley. We're going with the other side of that game. On DraftKings, he's $5,100. On FanDuel, he's $6,500. He looks absolutely great in the preseason. He didn't look too great this past week when he came in for Aaron Rodgers, but, he just kind of got thrown out there out of nowhere. He wasn't really expecting that, which even though players should be ready at all times, he had 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions, so if he can cut down the interceptions, he should be all right this week. But that's why I put him in as the risk. He's not exactly my value player because, we saw that he could throw interceptions, and we don't want that. He's playing a surprisingly good Saints defense. I mean, they're not great, but they've been forcing turnovers a lot these past few weeks. I believe they had 5 turnovers last week against Matthew Stafford, who's an elite quarterback. So they're actually doing pretty decent, but they're still giving up 268 yards per game passing so far this year. So Brett Hundley can definitely put up some points against them as long as he doesn't make too many mistakes. He does have a couple of good receivers in Jordy Nelson, Randall Cobb, and Devontae Adams. So he's going to be my risk this week instead of my value player. I'm going to give that to Tyrod Taylor, but that's going to be my quarterbacks. Then moving on over to the running backs this week. My value player is going to be Jay Ajayi. Last week I had him as my risky player, and he had a pretty good week. Unfortunately, he didn't score any touchdowns or anything, so his points weren't that high. But on DraftKings this week, he's only $6,200. On FanDuel, he's a little bit more at $7,400. He's coming off of his best rushing performance last week. I believe he had 130 yards, so that's pretty good for him. Jets rank 28th in yards per game against rushing so far this year, and he should be able to punch in at least 1 touchdown, I believe. The Jets don't give up a whole lot of touchdowns rushing. I mean, they're not great by any means. They give up a lot of yards per game, so I think Ajayi is going to be able to run the ball quite well against them and hopefully punch in at least 1 or 2 touchdowns. My safe player is going to be Leonard Fournette. I mean, why not? On DraftKings, he's $8,600. On FanDuel, he's $9,000. He's scored a touchdown in every game so far this season. Some games he's had 2, so you can almost guarantee yourself that you're going to get a touchdown this week. He's playing up against the Colts, who have given up the most rushing touchdowns this year at 8, so that's also a good reason to take him. He scored every game. They've given up the most touchdowns, but you do need to keep an eye out for his ankle injury. He's been limited at practice. I don't believe he's even practicing today, which is Wednesday, but he should be a full participant in the game. He should be getting a good amount of carries, and he's definitely going to be a pretty safe pick this week. So the risky player is going to be Melvin Gordon. On DraftKings, he's $7,000. On FanDuel, he's $7,700. He's averaging the 3rd most fantasy points per game this year so far. but he is up against Denver, who is the second best against opposing running backs. But just last week, they got exposed by Darkwa and the Giants offense. So Melvin Gordon's an elite running back. He's been putting up a lot of points these last few weeks. I think he's broken 30 points in each of the last 2 games he's had. So if he can have a good performance, I think he's going to be a great pick, but he is definitely risky because the Broncos have been doing pretty well against running backs. But the good thing about Melvin Gordon is he does help you in the passing game as well with the PPR that you get. In the last meeting he had against the Broncos, he had 18.9 DraftKings points, which isn't anything special, but that is 2.5 times value, so it's not too bad for him, and we're expecting a little bit more hopefully this week. Moving over to the wide receivers this week, I think we got some interesting ones here. My value player is going to be Zay Jones on DraftKings. He's only $3,600. On FanDuel, he's $4,500. He's going up against the Buccaneers, as I said, with Tyrod Taylor, and they've given up the most fantasy points per game to opposing wide receivers so far this year. Jordan Matthews has been out with a broken thumb, I believe, so he could miss this game as well, which could give Zay Jones more usage, I believe. He's a good cheap stack to go with Tyrod Taylor. I don't think it's going to be like the best play by any means to go with Zay Jones, but if Jordan Matthews does miss this game again, at this price, Zay Jones is definitely going to be a pretty good value pick. My safe player is going to be Michael Thomas, though. DraftKings, he's $7,500. On FanDuel, he's $7,700, so not too much difference there. He's averaging double the DraftKings points in away games this year than he is in home games. He's definitely going to be a good stack with Drew Brees in the game, as I said, that has the highest game total. He's averaging 8.6 targets per game so far this year. So hopefully in this game up against Green Bay, he can get at least 10 or so targets and maybe punch in a touchdown. Hopefully should be able to get over 20 points as long as Drew Brees has a pretty good game. My risky player, this is just kind of a gut feeling, is going to be Martavis Bryant. On DraftKings, he's $4,300. On FanDuel, he's $5,400. He's averaging 13.6 DraftKings points at home this season so far. And if you guys have paid much attention to the media and stuff in the NFL, a couple weeks ago, Antonio Brown was complaining that he wasn't getting enough targets, that Ben was missing him with throws. And the next week, he comes back and has a great week. Le'Veon Bell complained that he wasn't getting enough carries. And then the next week, he comes back and has a great week. So this past week, Martavis Bryant, with the trade rumors, he was complaining that he's not getting usage enough, really. He kind of denied it, but we all know it's probably true. So hopefully it's his turn. Ben might go after him a couple times this week. He is a cheap player, and he poses a good deep threat if Big Ben can hit him. Big Ben has not been great with downfield passes this year, but if he can get open on one and catch one big catch, go for a 40 or 50 yard touchdown, I think Martavis Bryant could be a great play, but he's definitely going to be very risky this week. Moving over to the tight ends, we got some interesting ones here. Our value player is going to be Kyle Rudolph. On DraftKings, he's $3,800. On FanDuel, he's $5,400. In the last 2 weeks, he's had 9 targets in each of those 2 games. He's averaging 13.1 DraftKings points over those 2 games that he had the 9 targets. So I'm thinking he should be able to hit at least 3 times value and get to about 12 points or so, if not more, and get upwards of 15-ish. But I think he's going to be a pretty good pick. Not too many of the tight ends that were much cheaper than him were very confident for me. I didn't really like too many of them, so I think the value player is just going to have to be Kyle Rudolph. My safe player is going to be Delaney Walker, though. On DraftKings, he's $5,800. On FanDuel, he's $5,900. The Browns are the worst team in the league against tight ends so far this year. They've given up the most touchdowns. Mariota has, I believe, a hip injury, and he's still hurt. So he's being forced to throw the ball in the pocket and not be able to scramble as much. So if he's going to be trying to get rid of the ball early and stuff, he's probably going to be looking towards Delaney Walker, who's going up against the worst team in the league against tight ends. But the risky player is going to be Jack Doyle. On DraftKings, he's $3,400. On FanDuel, he's $5,100. In this last game, he had 11 targets, and he did drop a couple of passes, but he did score a touchdown in this last game. Jacksonville's 23rd against opposing tight ends, but they're really good elsewhere on the field. They don't give a lot of big plays. Not very good against the run, though, so they may run the ball quite a bit this game with Frank Gore and Mack. But I think if Jacoby Brissett's going to be dumping the ball off a lot, he's probably going to be looking towards Jack Doyle again. If he doesn't drop too many passes like he did this past week, then he could get, 7 or 8 receptions again and maybe 50 or 60 yards. And if he could punch in a touchdown, we could be looking at about 15 to 20 points as well for Jack Doyle this week. So this week, guys, I decided to throw in a defense of the week. I didn't add defense in last week, but, if I had, it probably would have scored a touchdown because I feel like every defense last week just about scored a touchdown. But my defense this week is going to be the LA Chargers. On DraftKings, they're cheap and they're only $2,400. On FanDuel, they're only $4,100, also cheap. They had 8 DraftKings points in their last meeting with the Broncos, which isn't too bad. Denver's offense is looking pretty bad lately, and they just lost Emmanuel Sanders, so that's one of their best receivers out, at least for this week. We don't know how long he's going to be out for total, but they're cheap defense. They should be a fairly safe play to use. I don't want to give you guys like the obvious defenses, which are just going to be the ones that are the most expensive. But if you're looking for a cheap defense, go with the LA Chargers. I think they're going to be able to put up some decent points for you guys. But that's going to conclude my Week 7 DraftKings and FanDuel picks. If you guys liked the video, please drop a like. If you enjoyed this, also subscribe to the channel. I'm going to be uploading this kind of video every week, giving out my picks. Hopefully we can all win some money together. Should have some more videos up later this week. Leave a comment down below of the players that you guys have taken and your thoughts on the picks that I have myself. If there's some other ones that I think, or that you guys think that I missed out on in the video that you think could be pretty good, just let me know and maybe I'll throw up a comment so it'll be in the top and let people know that that's a pretty good pick as well. Appreciate you guys coming today. Hope you have a good one. And this has been Nick with Inside the Stands, and we'll see you later.